Justin Dunn, please.
Stewart, that sounds like a 3-down guarantee.
Justin, 3 months ago, you asked me to guarantee. I answered in a way that I answer my kids. I say, hey, there are no guarantees in life. What I should have said is that not only am I guaranteeing that we are a 3-down game, I can guarantee that it never crossed our minds anything other than that.
To my actual question, there's been a lot of fans speculating about the rule changes and could it lead to U.S. expansion. Is that the long-term view, and have you had conversations with interested Americans in bringing a Canadian Football League franchise to the United States?
It is not our objective. When it comes to expansion, I've often been asked that question, and I've said, while it's not a top priority, I've outlined what my 3 top priorities of the league office are. While it's not a top priority, of course, it's incredibly important. We would love to have a 10th team in this league. But when I say 10th team, I mean a Canadian 10th team. That is our focus.
Thank you. Next question, JC Abbott.
JC Abbott, 3Down Nation. Just a couple days ago, Stu, we had the 2 head coaches in this game on that stage emphatically state that they want the football ops cap gone. How can you justify keeping that in place when it seems to be universally reviled by the people who run the teams in this league?
Well, I would say that the cap was introduced many years ago, and it was done in conjunction with all the presidents. Any cap is meant to try and keep parity and keep fairness in a league. We're striking a balance with supporting our coaches and with also creating a situation where all teams can compete effectively. The cap is increasing for the 4th straight year, and we've got a lot of amazing coaches coming up through the ranks, and I'm excited about the future.
You're putting additional strain on coaches in this league by bringing in these rule changes, having them adapt to this. They'll tell you that there's not enough people on staff and they're not getting paid enough to bring good people into this league consistently. How concerned are you about brain drain because of this cap?
I'd say I'm excited by the future of where this can go. I think our coaches are going to take these new rule changes, create new strategies, create more aggressive play calling. Certainly as it relates to 3rd downs, as it relates to when they're heading towards the end zone or coming out. The coaches I've talked to have all expressed excitement about where this can go.
Thank you. Next question, Jeff Hamilton.
Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press. I think with these rule changes, you mentioned overwhelming, positiveness to it. I don't know if I feel that the same way, especially where we are today, here in Winnipeg. And I think people were open to rule changes, maybe, but I'm wondering for some clarity on how this came to be. Right? We know the Board of Governors as a pretty fierce group that kind of has butted heads for years, and I'm wondering whose idea was this? Like, how did this come to, these rule change ideas? You mentioned you introduced this to the group. Was this your idea? Was this your vision coming in that you had to sell on them, or was this their idea that they were hoping that you would, like many commissioners before you, would come to fruition? Like, whose idea is this?
Well, I think when I first began the process to becoming the next commissioner, I spoke with the board and we talked about vision. And I said, look, we have an incredible product. Football is the best sport in the world, and Canadian football is awesome. And if we are going to take this league and continue to grow in a very challenging marketplace, we've got to be able to embrace some change. And I had unanimity at that point saying, yes, we want you to focus on that. And so early on with our team at the league office and football operations, I challenged them. I said, what can we do? What can we do to move forward? And this team, this group that probably has, I think we counted it up, 300 years of combined football experience, 200 years of combined professional football experience, and have stewarded our game for the last 20 to 30 years. They put their heads to it, and it was a long process. And we looked at data. We looked at market research. And that all came together, and it said, oh my goodness, these rule changes really protect what is Canadian about our game and allow us to show all the improvements we've talked about. And when I took that to the Board of Governors, it was absolute enthusiasm and support.
It would have been a calculated decision by you to keep it as a small group, you know, including not letting brass with all the 9 teams. And we often hear about this league, about collaboration and the importance of everybody in on it. And that includes the fan base as well, right? So you announce this, there's an excitement coming from it, but everyone's kind of almost in shock because nobody really knew it was coming. Where did you see the value or maybe the importance in keeping everybody out before announcing such significant changes to this league?
Well, we had a lot of people involved in the decision making. I just talked about it. We've got at the team office just incredible wealth of experience focused on discussion, debate, and ultimately coming to the conclusions that we did. The changes that we made, I would call those structural, and now we're taking it to the Rules Committee to get into the technical. And that's, you know, I'm looking forward to working with the Management Council made up of presidents and the CFLPA, coaches, GMs, and that's where we're going to push forward on the technical aspects of the changes.
Thank you. Next 3 questions are Paul Friesen, Derek Taylor, and Jamie Nye. Please go ahead, Paul.
Thank you. Hi, Paul Friesen from the Winnipeg Sun. You mentioned your job is championing the spirit of Canadian football. It seems you've dampened it in a few places. Mike O'Shea, a Hall of Fame Canadian player and now head coach, says he could never be in favor of them. Mike Miller, the New Brunswick kid who's played and coached 11 and 2 seasons now, said the changes made him feel sick to the stomach. Your best player called them garbage. How does that not make you give pause?
Well, look, I'll start with Nathan. Boy, congratulations to him. George Reed Award winner, most outstanding Canadian, and what a season he had. He is a superstar in our league, and I absolutely respect his opinion and had a wonderful conversation with him the day after the announcement. I've spoken, the 2 starting quarterbacks in this year's Grey Cup have both come out very supportive of the changes. I've spoken to player agents who've told me their entire rosters are massively in support. Really, it has been, I expected a lot of debate, and that's fair, but the large majority of players, agents, and coaches I've talked to have all been supportive.
O'Shea has, of course, played and coached in this league for more than 30 years, not to mention his university and high school days, so the game means everything to him. You orchestrate these changes without consulting coaches, players, or fans after being on the job a few months. Can you make that make sense?
I worked with my team that has, as I mentioned, over 300 years of combined experience in football and professional football. So there was an incredible consultation with some great minds, and truly our objective was to elevate and showcase this great Canadian game while protecting everything that's unique about it.
Thank you, Paul. Next question, Jamie Nye. Derek Taylor, sorry.
Derek Taylor from CJB in Winnipeg. What was the information that you used to say the goalposts need to be moved from the middle of the field? Because PFF's data and mine would say teams have no problem attacking that in the end zone, even the short part of the end zone.
Our data over the last 2 years would tell us that 80% of all pass attempts into the end zone were to the sides. That's an incredibly lopsided piece of data. The throws over the middle just weren't there. And then when you look at teams starting on their own 1-yard line after a defensive stop, they were clearly limited to half the field as they couldn't operate with the goalpost right behind them. So a lot of data was involved. Our top stats folks were involved, and all of that pointed to the benefits of moving the goalposts.
Yeah, it's the data that was published said left, middle, right, taken from play-by-play data as opposed to exactly at the 1 yard to the left of it, which shows 0 to 5 yards into the field, teams complete 51% of the passes, which is better than at the numbers.
Sorry, what's your question?
I just that left, middle, right is not a great example of, because what is the middle of the field from the left hash versus the right hash?
We truly believe there will be more pass attempts across the middle. There will be better sight lines for our fans. There will be player safety benefits. There's no more using a post as a pick from the offense as they play, and coming out of the end zone, you will have a freedom to use your entire playbook.
Thank you. Next question, Jamie Knight, please.
Jamie Nye from 980 CJME in Regina. You talk about streamlining the game and making it easier to follow. This league has one of the most convoluted rules in sports that has somebody have to count how many snaps a player has in the designated nationalized American. Is the ratio a priority for you to clarify with the CFLPA to streamline the game even further?
Well, I'll start by saying I've really enjoyed developing the relationship with the CFLPA. My relationship has grown with David Mackey and Solomon over the last 7 months, and we talk about a range of subjects. The ratio is not one of them. We have a CBA that's in place through till 2029. That's baked into the CBA. I've talked about the Canadian talent and how successful our Canadian talent's been. I'm thrilled about that, and I'm sure as we approach 2029, all aspects of that CBA will come under discussion.
Launching a new website, new fantasy games. The last time the CFL went through an undertaking like this with Genius Sports, you know this at TSN, that stats thing was a mess. Is Genius Sports part of this future as a 10th partner of the Canadian Football League on this app, on this new website for the teams?
Look, I absolutely acknowledge I was on the outside looking in or close by professionally, and the stats rollout did not go well. It just simply did not. I will say that has improved significantly. I've also been developing my relationship with Genius. They're delivering stable stats now. They've supported us with a lot of our free-to-play games that we have on our website. But their expertise is not in website development or app development. So no, they will not be involved in that going forward.
Thank you. Next 3 questions are Mark Arsenault, Pablo Vergara, and Didier Mejus. Please go ahead, Mike.
Mike Arsenault, CBC Manitoba. You mentioned some initiatives you're taking to sort of attract a younger audience, like TikTok and those kinds of things. Are these rule changes, is one of the goals to attract a younger audience, the future audience of this league?
I think the rule changes are about showcasing our game as well as we possibly can. And if that creates more excitement on the field, then that's great for everyone. Our fantastic existing fan base, and as well as new fans that might see viral moments of great plays being made. But it's just simply, that's the game. We have to be thinking much broader than the game and reach these new audiences where they are. And that's why we talk about those platforms.
And just to follow up, some polls that have come out that we've published have shown that, some of your diehard fans, particularly like some of the older fans of the league, really aren't opposed to these rules. So what's your message to those fans who say, don't change our Canadian game?
Well, look, I absolutely appreciate our fans, and they are the lifeblood of our league. I looked at the research that's been put out there, and most of it says at all age groups there is support for the changes. If you look, there's some leading questions. Do you believe in the Americanization or closer NFL rules? Well, that's not what we're doing. We are 3 down, 65-yard wide, 12-player league. But when they analyze each one of those changes, we see actually there's more support for them than not. And certainly when you get down to younger demos, there's a lot of support.
Thank you. Next question, Pablo.
Hi, Stewart. So you've made transparency a key element. You talk about the negotiation list. I was wondering, are you thinking about, is making player salaries public something you'd be open to in the future?
Well, I haven't had that as a discussion topic so far. I think that's probably one that can go into our January winter meetings. But yes, I want to make sure that our fans have as much access to data as possible in our league, and the negotiation list certainly was a start to that. Ahead of the winter meetings in January, I plan to publish our agenda, our key topics, our items that we're going to talk about, so people understand these are the things we're looking at.
Thank you. Next question, Didier Mejus.
Didier Mejus, RDS. Stewart, talking to football ops people across the league, they're all unanimous that the salary cap has an impact on the field. I know one of your goals is to improve the product on the field, but with those limited resources that they have, it really makes it tough on them, you know, to bring, you know, quality players. Not that there's not quality players in league, but, you know, to be able to bring some more players with improving, you know, the game on the field. Have you put any thought about lifting, you know, that salary cap, you know?
And you're talking player salary cap?
No,
or
I'm talking
the
about football ops salary cap.
Well, the football operations cap is going to increase for the 4th straight year this year, so it will. And it is in place so that all the teams are operating on a level playing field, because sometimes that's what a cap is supposed to deliver. I hope you're hearing from me that I'm focused on growth. I'm focused on taking our amazing league and our great sport and growing. And as we grow, that rising tide will lift all boats.
And would you care to say by how much? Do you know by how much the cap will increase?
No, we haven't announced that yet.
Thank you. So we have 9 questions lined up and about 10 minutes left. So there will be no more questions after those 9 questions. So yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Cam McIntosh, CBC News Network. So there's external polling out this week that indicates that the majority of football fans in Canada under age 55 identify as NFL fans. So when you're talking about growing the game, how critical are those people? People that are already watching football but aren't necessarily watching the CFL or as interested in the CFL as the NFL. How critical is this, and how much is all of this geared towards getting those people?
Well, I think football fandom is outstanding. So we are not in competition with the NFL. We want to make sure that those who have a propensity to love football understand just how amazing our game is. So yes, everything that I talked about today is to try and deliver that message, to expose our game. That series, our All Access and Grey Cup, introduce anyone who may not yet know our game to who we are, who our players are, the plays that they make. That's a great starting point. That's an unbelievable market, those that love football. And you combine that with what we're doing with growing the youth game that we talked about today and announced yesterday. All of that fits together. Frankly, if a youngster is playing football and they've got a Giants shirt on and they're playing against somebody with a Bomber shirt on, that's great. Just play football. They live in Canada, we have our 9 markets, and they will become CFL fans, I'm sure of it.
Thank you. The next 3 questions are Gabriel Hamilton, Frédéric Daigle, and Michael Drigger. Please go ahead, Gabriel.
Stewart, just over here. You had mentioned earlier if there was expansion, it was going to be a 10th Canadian team. Are there future plans for an Atlantic Canada-based team? And would that start with a preseason game, a regular season game, or speaking with investment groups?
You know, I've been pleased over these last 7 months that the inbound calls we take for potential interest by parties who have means and have focus and have connections has been great. We have some excellent conversations going on across a number of different markets. Our strategy as it relates to expansion, whether it's the East Coast, whether it's Quebec City that's been talked about a lot, or anywhere else in Canada, is to be pulled into a market. We want that interested group that's going to have the financial wherewithal, the political connections, and the infrastructure plan to pull us into a community because they've done the work, and we give them a lot of background if in order to do so. So those conversations are happening across the country. I'm looking forward to seeing where they go.
Thank you. Prochaine question, Frédéric.
Yes, Frédéric Daigle, La Presse Canadienne. Thank you, Stewart. With those new rules, especially the field length rules, it's going to be complicated for some markets, and I'm thinking particularly of Montreal, who's playing in a U Sport stadium that they don't own. Have you had discussions with U Sport? Have you had discussions with places like McGill University about the change of the field length, and what do you foresee problems for those markets to have a proper field of play?
Well, I'll start with U Sports. Have had some great conversations with U Sports, and those will continue as they kind of consider any downward impact on those changes. But let me be clear, they don't have to change. Amateur football doesn't have to change. These rules, they are still playing the Canadian game. They're throwing, catching, kicking, running, 3 downs, 12 players. That game can exist on any type of field. For those stadiums, those 3 stadiums that do share with U Sport, it will be the CFL's responsibility to change the field back and forth in a case that they do not adopt the same changes.
Thank you. Next question, Michel Dredger.
Thank you. Commissioner Michel Dredger, Radio Envol 91, ici à Saint-Boniface. Going to one of my colleagues further things about where the interest under 55 years of age is, they say they're NFL fans. I would be willing to bet that most of that streams from fantasy football, and I bet you if we did a poll of the people in this room, there'd be a lot of hands go up that say they're in multiple fantasy football leagues, but I don't know any of my friends that actually participate in the Canadian one. I would love the idea that we start pushing that, because that's, I think, one of the great ways to get the youth involved more in the CFL. Can you expand a little bit on what you foresee who our partners will be in the fantasy football Canadian League?
And by partners, sorry, who do you mean by partners?
Like, are you going to be setting up, like, with TSN on a platform for fantasy, that kind of thing?
Yes, we are going to make sure our fantasy game is as exposed as widely as possible. I could not agree more. Fantasy, for all age groups, not just the young age groups, but for all age groups, is a gateway to fandom. And we've seen that time and again. We think this season-long fantasy game is going to be an excellent opportunity to engage current fans and also attract new ones. So we'll make sure that's distributed as widely as possible.
Merci, Michel. The next and last 5 questions, John Hodge, Jean-François Poirier, Benoit Rioux, Ferran Lalji, and Dave Naylor. Please go ahead, John.
John Hodge, 3 Down Nation. Stu, I want to ask you about the replay center. Part of the new rules is pace of play, and the replay center can sometimes bog that down. And I've heard frustration from fans and other members of the media that sometimes it seems very random when the replay center pops in versus when it doesn't. I'm curious, what is your vision for the future of the replay center and its role?
Well, thank you. I think I'm going to start by saying I believe we have world-class referees. And part of what I've really enjoyed learning is dealing with football operations, dealing with our crew of referees. And I watch them week in, week out do one of the hardest jobs I can imagine, and they do it exceptionally well. And we have very strict review of every play in every game, and it is impressive how effective they are. The replay center is trying to support those incredible referees with anything that might be clear and obvious that might be missed. I sat and watched a full game in the replay center just to get a sense of what that was like. I was incredibly impressed with the communication that happens from that crew down to the field. And just by the way, I did not say a single word while I was at the back bench. I had no influence. I was just observing. Really impressive how they play, how they work together, I should say. Now, having said that, you're 100% right. Game flow is critically important. I think every league in the world of similar nature, not just football, is trying to simplify that type of process. And I know at the winter meetings in January, we will go over how do we keep the excellence of what we do, but simplify the process and move that game flow faster.
Just to pull on Jamie's thought about the ratio. Your predecessor, the global program, was a bit of a pet issue for him. I'm curious, for you, is your commitment to the global program consistent and long-term?
Look, I've come in, I've watched from afar the global program. I've been impressed with the level of play with a number of our global players. They've really added a flavor to our game. The global program is baked into our CBA. So that is here to stay through till 2029, and I'm encouraged by that. However, I will say that my focus is on Canada. I want to make sure we are developing within Canada and focus moving forward while supporting this great program that's already in place.
Thank you. Prochaine question, Jean-François.
Bonjour, Monsieur Johnston.
Bonjour.
Jean-François Poirier, Radio-Canada. Je vais vous poser la question en français pour
Okay.
notre auditoire francophone.
Okay.
Votre français semble très bien en passant.
Merci.
Félicitations. Alors, pourquoi est-ce si nécessaire de modifier les règlements? Est-ce que vous courez un risque en agissant ici? Et deuxièmement, est-ce que vous croyez que les circuits inférieurs, universitaires, collégiaux, dans les écoles secondaires, feront comme la Ligue canadienne et changeront les règlements, même leur terrain?
Merci beaucoup. Si vous me permettez, je vais répondre en anglais parce qu'on n'a pas trop de temps ici. Mais merci. So was there a risk of changing these rules and modernizing our game in general with our fan base, I think? And then also, how does the impact on amateur football?
Exactly.
Okay. So we think the rule changes are going to showcase an outstanding game. And it's going to elevate that game in front of our current fans and potentially new ones. So we're very excited by that. And I think when you see that, you'll see that the 3 downs, les 3 essais, les 12 joueurs, the grand terrain, the huge end zones, that's going to be the game that we all know and love. Clean sight lines. So we're excited by where that's going to go. In terms of amateur, we are working very closely with all levels of amateur football, and our going in position is there is no pressure to change. This will be the same game on any field. This is the Canadian football game, and as they think about potentially changing, we want to be there to support where we can.
Merci. Benoît?
C'est le bloc francophone.
Okay, merci.
Sans avoir un plan d'expansion précis, ce que je comprends, c'est que la Ville de Québec fait partie des marchés potentiels, parmi d'autres. En tant que commissaire, qu'est-ce que tu aimes de la candidature potentielle de la Ville de Québec?
Première fois, merci pour parler lentement. Question specifically about expansion to Quebec City. There is no doubt Quebec City is an incredible football market. You see what they've done with the Rouge et Or. They have a fan base there for the game of football, which is impressive. It's a great population base, and I'm excited about that as one of the potentials for expansion.
Merci, Benoît. Next question, Farhan.
Stu, you've seen gambling have a real negative impact in some other leagues south of the border. It's rocked the NBA. The NFL is investigating. They're looking at recommendations to try to find a way to eliminate prop betting, at least in legal gaming outlets. Your players, given their salaries, might be even more vulnerable. How concerned are you about gambling in the CFL and potentially prop betting specifically, and do you want to do anything about it?
Thanks, Farhan. Integrity is first and foremost, and it starts with our match manipulation policy. It's mandatory education, not just for players, but coaches, presidents, owners, staff. Everybody goes through our match manipulation policy. It does a great job in education. We have external experts who monitor our betting platforms, and they raise issues if they see anything funky that's going on. We had 5 games this year that triggered alerts. So they're paying attention. They triggered alerts. We did investigate, and there were no concerns from an integrity standpoint once the investigation happened. So it is first and foremost a priority. We want to make sure our education, it starts with education, and then we'll consider, and it starts with, and then monitoring, so it's proactive and real-time monitoring and reactive. And at the same time, we are going to follow very closely what is happening around the world in this area.
You mentioned neg lists earlier. There are some who believe that the neg list might actually be an impediment to getting great players in the league because they're kind of locked into one spot, and especially in the case of quarterbacks, which is harder and harder to get quality quarterbacks into the league. Is the neg list a necessary tool today?
Look, I think I'm not well versed enough really in kind of those implications to answer that question today. It's a conversation I'd love to have with all of our GMs across the board and our presidents and understand what is is this the best path? Maybe it is. I know my staff is tired of me saying, why do we do this? I say that on absolutely every piece of action that we take is, why do we do this? Often the answer explains why, and we continue to do that. But I'll ask that question as well.
Thank you. Last question, Dave Naylor, please.
Stuart, last off season, the CFLPA put out its first published team reports based on player feedback. This week, the National Football League filed a grievance against its union that has been putting out those reports for maybe 4 or 5 years at least. The CFLPA, I think, was modeling its reports off what they saw the NFLPA doing. Do you anticipate any pushbacks from your team or league office against the CFLPA continuing to publish team reports based on player feedback?
Well, Dave, let me start by saying I've been very pleased with the relationship that I've begun personally, and we have, I think, transformed at the league between the league and the PA. Really great conversations, both formal and informal. And look, we're not going to agree on everything, and we acknowledge that, and that's fine. We have systems in place to manage disagreement. I'm incredibly supportive of those types of conversations. That particular conversation hasn't happened yet, so it's hard for me to say if I anticipate it will.
Thank you, and that concludes our event today. Thank you everyone for joining us for Commissioner Johnston State of the League Media Address. Merci tout le monde d'avoir assisté au bilan de saison du commissaire Johnston.